I'm somebody who very briefly and very tentatively brushed up against Alex Belfield, and it wasn't a pleasant experience. It wasn't a particularly awful experience, but I can certainly understand and appreciate how other people could have been attacked, vilified, and hurt far more than I was. This is somebody who opened his mouth before he thought, and who thought a great deal about himself, and and not enough, I think, about others. I don't think that Alex Belfield is fundamentally an evil character, but I think he's a fundamentally flawed and sad individual. And the impending release of this man from prison uh, is is about a figure who is as volatile as he is notorious. Alex Belfield is former BBC presenter, convicted stalker, self-styled voice of reason, in the eyes of the Nottinghamshire Post and many others, a man whose behaviour ought to concern us deeply, not only before he was in prison, but when he is finally released. Belfield's sentence in September 2022 to 5 years and 26 weeks for stalking and harassment is expected to be released from HMP Foss Way in June 2025. That's in a few weeks' time. But this isn't an ordinary release. Belfield's victims, notably including the BBC broadcasters Jeremy Vine and Bernie Keith and the videographer Ben Hewis, are living apparently in trepidation, and their fear is not hysterical. It's rational. It's founded upon Belfield's continued refusal, it appears, to accept the seriousness of his actions even from within the prison walls, or it's about the refusal of his friends and those people with access to his YouTube site who refuse to accept the seriousness of his actions. And these two things impact each other. The Nottinghamshire Post recently revealed that Belfield's official website, run presumably by his supporters and agents, is already promoting a summer relaunch of his Voice of Reason channel, and he is, it appears, also finalising no fewer than 6 books and has ambitions to star in a panto entitled, with grotesque irony, Jack and the Beanstalker. Now, what sort of man, after being found guilty of shattering the mental well-being of 8 people, markets his crime as a brand? Indeed, the website refers to Belfield as the convicted talker and declares that he has been a political prisoner since 2023, a claim so deluded it veers on the tragicomic. A political prisoner, a man in prison not for his opinions but for his relentless personal attacks on individuals. And the court was explicit. Mr. Justice Saini said that during sentencing that Belfield was not jailed for criticisms of the BBC or expressions of free speech. He was jailed for harassment, repeated, malicious, life-destroying harassment for which he showed no remorse. And here's the rub. It's not merely the victims who should be fearful of his release. Frankly, we should fear for his own sanity, for Belfield's own sanity. And despite the walls of the prison, content has continued to drip out of his YouTube channel. An AI-generated voice claiming to be Belfield appeared over Easter, mocking the charges and implicating Justice Saini and his wife in absurd conspiracies regarding BBC scandals. Now, Nottinghamshire Live intervened, flagging the video to YouTube, who swiftly removed it, but the damage was done. Belfield's channel, already demonetised, has now received formal strikes. And one more mishap, one more misstep, and his voice of reason could be silenced permanently. But far more troubling is what this indicates about Belfield's mindset. Now, you've got to make it very clear, I've got to make it very clear, that Belfield, before he went into prison, is somebody with extraordinary talent, but also with the most remarkable lack of judgment. And I think he encapsulates a lot of the things that people might identify as the problems with social media. And that is exactly it. The talent, the hard work, and the complete lack of filter. the lack of judgment. And despite the walls of the prison, content has continued to drop out. And, he's warned. He was warned in the starkest terms that by the court, if he breaches the restraining orders even once, then he faces an immediate recall to prison. No trial, no hearing, no defence, straight back to jail. And that's what the terms of his probation will state. And yet he, or at least his agents, toy dangerously close with fire, mocking, blaming and minimising the judge, the local police. One might charitably say this is mere bravado, an attempt to save face, yet it reveals something more concerning, an inability to engage with reality. And prison must be awful, especially a prison with a reputation like HMP Fosse, which is one of the toughest, apparently, in the country. The isolation, the stigma, the loss of self-direction, these things are not there merely to punish. They dismantle people psychologically. And Belfield will emerge from 2.5 years of institutional savagery into a world where his old tricks could send him straight back inside again. And the probation terms are not academic. Belfield will be subject to rigorous supervision for 3 years, and any public utterance will be scrutinised against the backdrop of those of the 10 indefinite restraining orders. His victims, including Liz Green, who described his ongoing online activities as astonishing and sad, I take comfort in those supervision orders and those indefinite restraining orders, but it's a brittle comfort, because many, quite rightly, fear that Belfield will not be able to help himself and will still do damage. And that's the tragedy. Belfield, once a lively if controversial broadcaster, has by his own hand become the agent of his own ruin. His voice of reason has long since transformed into a voice of obsession, and if he persists violating the terms of his release, it would be the voice it would be his voice, not his enemies, that condemns him to a longer and even more ruinous second sentence. He's travelling the path of others like Tommy Robinson. And although one might think Tommy Robinson should not be in prison, the brutal reality is the courts do not take contempt of court lightly. And Jeremy Vine, displaying greater generosity than most, has expressed hope that Belfield can rethink his life before it's too late. And I would urge the same, but time is short. And his friends should rethink his life. And his own website, already laced with provocation, is evidence enough that Belfield is struggling to detach his sense of identity from the chaos he once caused, and not to take the crime seriously. It may not be him. It may be other people. It may be pure malice. We can't say. But what is right is that we need to protect the victims. We need equally to recognise the psychological fragility of the man himself. Alex Belfield will emerge into a probationary minefield of his own making, surrounded on all sides by the consequences of actions that he still completely refuses to fully own. And if he has any hope of salvaging his life, he must lay down these weapons of resentment and vendetta. And if he doesn't, he will soon find that the voice of reason becomes the whisper of regret, echoing behind prison doors which slam shut again.